Okay, so how this is going to work is I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to give each of the panelists a chance to just to make a comment on the question. And then once they have answered the questions, we're going to open the floor for anyone that's in the attendance to also comment on the same question. And then if any of our panelists have a response to that, we're going to ask you to raise your hand, and anyone that is in the attendance that has a question or a suggestion or comment, go ahead and raise your hand too, and we'll come back to you so that you can respond as well. So our first question is, we're going to start with Dr. Weed. And so in your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges to ensure individual animal welfare for small exotic pets?
You might be frozen.
Then Dr. Torsen, do you want to take this first question?
Sure. Do you mind repeating that one more time?
Absolutely. In your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges to ensure individual animal welfare in small exotic pets?
Sure. I think biggest challenges are probably education, educating owners, educating staff, everybody. I think it's the biggest thing. And a lot of times compliance can be tough. Financially, it'll be a burden on people for pets that don't cost as much money, but I have to keep in mind these are also live, living creatures that we want to take care of. So I would say those are the biggest challenges for me.
Okay. Tara Friel?
I'm not a veterinarian, but I would say, just from my perspective and hearing about some clinical issues, that it does seem like education around nutrition is somewhat lacking, and that can present challenges. And I would agree on the education part.
Okay. Dr. Mackey?
Yep, we're going to go for 3. Education. It is heartbreaking when owners come in and they think they're doing everything right, and they care. They care because they are in the clinic now because there's a health issue. And it's very heartbreaking to try and explain to them that everything they're doing is inappropriate for that species, from cage size to diet to temperatures. There's so much information out there that's inappropriate. And that's what they often get their hands on, or the majority rules. And most of the internet says, most of the storekeepers or the people that they talk to, the other pet owners say. And sometimes it feels like as a veterinarian, we're that single voice. So again, education, education. It's not that the owners don't mean well. It's that they've been given the wrong information and they just don't understand it.
Awesome. Thank you. And now we're going to open up to our attendees. How do you guys feel about the education that they've all been mentioning? And if there's other challenges that you think are out there, we want to hear from you guys what challenges that you guys see. If you have anything, you can put it in the Q&A. You can also raise your hand and you can answer live.
Hi, folks. I'm back.
Thank you, Dr. Weed. Did you want a chance to answer this in your experience?
You'll have to repeat the question for me, please. Yes, I'm here.
Yes, sir. In your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges to ensure individual animal welfare for small exotic pets?
I guess there's 2 answers to that, whether you're working in a large facility or you're working in a small facility, or you've got a private facility. I guess that's 3. My best suggestion is lots of observations, and a lot of folks skip over that. Well, we're too busy. Well, you may be missing some of the most important things that you're looking for or you need to find.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
I don't have any hands raised. I do have a question. Hold on just a minute. How do we combat the misinformation online?
I'd like to take a crack at that for a second. I would say good luck. There's so much misinformation online that you really got to be careful.
Mhm. Yeah,
Any
I
other
think just
panelists?
harping on it as much as you can. Anytime you get a chance to talk to someone who's got an animal, just beat a dead horse, really. And I guess another thing, try to get your own stuff out there on the internet online. So that's easy to see. You know, the misinformation is often right at the top of the list, some sort of forum that people find right away. You know, people will Google search, done it myself, just to kind of test it out. First thing written down is just some sort of forum where there's 15 different opinions, 14 of which might not be the best way to take care of this animal.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say speaking with your veterinarian, trying to get information directly from your vet versus like just clicking on the top Google search or speaking with people who can, maybe help interpret some peer-reviewed journal articles.
Thank you. Hey, Dave, it looks like we have an attendee's hand up.
Just a moment. Okay, we do. Rachel, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, hi. I just was going to respond to the original panel question about the challenges with animal welfare in the exotic pet care industry. I think just for myself as being an exotic pet owner and having children and having a lot of other responsibilities on top of it, I think a lot of it is people are just not educated with the requirements of caring for some of these pets and their lifespans. I mean, some of these pets, when you're talking about guinea pigs and chinchillas, they live as long as a cat or dog might live. And they actually take a lot of husbandry care, and people will get them for their kids that are too young to perform that care. And I don't think there's a lot of education in the pet stores of, hey, just know what you're getting into to make sure you're the right fit for this animal, because it is a very long-term commitment. So I think just having that more education on the pet store level where these animals are purchased, as most of them are purchased in pet stores, might help, a busy parent who doesn't realize, yeah, you're going to be changing these cages every week. You're going to be cutting fresh fruits and vegetables for these animals. And it's sometimes even a lot more care than what you would give a cat, for instance. You can't be gone for a whole week at a time. So vacations are a little bit difficult. So I think that's a biggest challenge for a lot of people.
Thank you, Rachel. Panelists, would any of you like to comment on that?
I just would totally agree. It's like my bearded dragon, all of a sudden now I'm taking him to the beach with me because maybe I don't, want to have somebody come to the house and take care of them. So it is difficult if all that information isn't available readily at the pet store. So I could see the challenges there.
Mhm. And a lot of people that work at the pet store might, have the best intentions, but might give misinformation.
One of the things that I had told my local pet stores anybody interested in getting an exotic pet, I would do consults with them before they get the pets. If they just want to talk about, I want to get this animal, you know, so we just did a relatively short appointment, but it's sitting down with the parent or the owner, going, you know, what is it you want out of the animal? Are you wanting something you can hold all the time, cuddle all the time? Okay, don't get that bearded dragon. It needs to stay in a certain temperature zone. You know, is it something you're, you know, just basically question and answer, trying to figure out what they're looking for in a pet and helping them match up with the correct one. And then giving some realistic expectations of the care involved. And I actually had quite a few owners coming in for that before getting pets. And I really think that made a difference. That's a teeny tiny percentage of pet owners, but still for those pets, I think they had some good fits.
Thank you.
Those are awesome. We also do pre-purchase exams, and even just a Zoom meeting with them makes so much difference.
Yep.
And if you have a question that you want to ask the panelists, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Okay, seeing no hands raised, we'll go on to the next question. And Dr. Mackey, we'll start with you. One of the more common welfare issues of small pets is the lack of access to appropriate and/or experienced veterinary care. What do you think the veterinarian community can do about this to address the issue?
Wow, that is a huge, huge issue. And it's something that I think we're dealing with everywhere. I think it kind of puts a lot of the burden on veterinarians and veterinarian organizations to help spread that information, to help educate their fellow veterinarians. We're getting some back feed. Oh, you got it. So like with my local VMA, we're doing things to put on programs, educational symposiums to educate, especially the new graduates who are interested in maybe doing some exotics. They've learned about it in school, but now they're ready to do a little more. I've even got some longtime veterinarians who are like, hey, I'm ready for something different. And it's just taking the time to go out and teach them and provide educational opportunities and educate the veterinarians on where they can go, AEMV, ARAV, AAV, plus more. I do think some of the large organizations like AVMA, like this symposium right here, are providing educational opportunities for veterinarians. And it's not enough right now, but I think half the battle is recognizing the problem. And we're addressing it. We're trying. We've got to get the veterinarians educated because they often don't get it in school. And we've got to give them an opportunity to get some hands-on experience. And but it's tough because sometimes you've only got universities available, appointments are booked. That access to care is a real problem right now for exotics.
Awesome, thank you. Tara Friel?
I think Dr. Mackey covered that perfectly. I don't have any other input to provide.
Okay, Dr. Weed?
I don't think I've got much to add.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Oh, did you have something, sir? Dr. Torsen?
I mean, yeah, that was pretty thorough. Advertisements crucial. We try to get out there in social media and just, success stories, things like that, just so people can see them. You mentioned, not being able to book out appointments. We try to talk to, big emergency corporations that see animals and try to interact with them, try to make some sort of pact or deal with them where we'll do a training program for them. They can see our animals overnight. I mean, at least in my area, in the state of Indiana and some of the surrounding states, we're after a certain time of day, we're the only people that are going to see any of these animals. So it would be awesome if we could educate a lot of these, 24-hour facilities. That would be probably biggest help. But yeah, Dr. Mackey did a great job explaining that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we're going to open it up to the attendees. We'd kind of like to hear what struggles have you guys had, if you've had them with the veterinarians, and what kind of things did you guys use to overcome it, or what downfalls or shortfalls do you still see with this, and what do you think we can do about it? If you would like to ask the question, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. You can also put it in the Q&A and we can ask it for you.
Okay, we have a question. Is there a way a currently practicing veterinarian who is not quite familiar with small exotics should learn more and expand their practice?
Dr. Torsen?
Sure. Yeah. So there's plenty of CE opportunities. Lots of them. AEMV, AAV, AREV have lots of stuff. The AVMA has things as well. I think more veterinary schools are trying to implement some sort of exotic program that's not optional. I know the school I went to was a non-optional program for that. That was fairly good. And then other things like, they could always visit other veterinarians. We have veterinarians come over all the time for, just a week or a couple days or just one day, just to get a little bit more hands-on experience.
Any other panelists want to comment?
Yeah, I would just add on, with what he was saying, sometimes it depends on your area, but if there are exotic veterinarians in your area who have experience and are doing good medicine, sometimes they'll mentor you and they'll kind of consult with you. For me personally, I really enjoy doing it with our new grads in the area because they're enthusiastic, and as I have decreased my clinical, I need somewhere to be sending my patients and my people. And, that's really working out well. I think when there are great CE opportunities, as he was saying, many, many opportunities there, but sometimes if you can find somebody local that you can kind of build a relationship with, I think that sort of helps, makes you more comfortable talking about a case or talking about how do you get blood on a jugular on a bird, and I'm just not comfortable with it. So I think if there's somebody available, it doesn't hurt to reach out and ask if they'd be willing to mentor you, because most of your exotic vets are going to be happy to do that.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the panel? Dave, do you have any
I
other?
have another question. How have you seen social media used effectively to help animal welfare for exotics?
Sarah?
Yep. So I'm sure there are other companies out there doing similar things, but I can speak from the Oxbow side. So Oxbow Animal Health has a veterinarian that's on staff full-time, Dr. Micah Colas, and he's put out some great educational material through videos that go through our social media. So I think that's a great platform really to highlight some of these important topics we've been discussing.
Thank you. Dr. Mackey?
Kind of both had our hands up at the same time. Oxbow does a great job. I think a lot of the organizations, and again, you'll see we're kind of mentioning these same groups over and over, but they're all doing everything they can with social media to advertise things. AAV, we do enrichment tips for birds. We all send those out through our our personal social media, through our group. Oxbow's doing things like this, Lefever's doing things like this. All of the organizations have it out there. So if nothing else, joining those groups, those Instagrams, following the Facebook, you're going to see Tuesday tips, whether it's for an owner, whether it's for a veterinarian, just lots of little tidbits of information. And I think that's one of the good things with social media is you can take little bites of really good information. And, you know, we had one with ice cubes with frozen vegetables and fruits that you put out for chickens for enrichment and a little treat for them. So little tidbits like that, that stick in the mind, and every little bit makes a difference on the welfare for all of our species.
Thank you. Dr. Torsen, did you have anything to add?
Unmute.
Thank you, Var. The House Rabbit Society is also a good resource. We work with them very closely, and they are awesome at getting the word out. They have their own Facebook page, and I'll say owners can be a very valuable resource. People read just the most gushing, awesome reviews, and it like makes me cry. It makes me feel so good. But it's a way of people to see that we can do good for their animals.
Awesome. Dr. Weed, I know you can't raise your hand, but do you have a comment?
I will admit to being a social media dinosaur, and so I haven't been keeping track of a lot of these things lately. Certainly folks who have access to a decent working computer and the internet can find all sorts of information.
Thank you,
Thank
sir. Dave, do we have another question?
We do. Are there any legislative or regulatory efforts that we can get behind as we move forward from this meeting?
Did you repeat that, please?
Sure. Are there any legislative or regulatory efforts that we can get behind as we move forward from this meeting?
Any panelists want to comment? Dr. Weed, if you have a comment, feel free to jump in.
I would defer to some of the folks working at the USDA because they're the ones who know what's most current. I would not, to be honest.
Okay. Dave, do we have another question?
Sure. I am fortunate that I have an avian vet to work with the new USDA requirements of a avian vet having to visit their facility yearly at a minimum. What are they to do? Not everyone lives in an area where avian vets are available.
Let's see. I mean, that is a difficult situation. I don't know if it would be accepted for kind of a Zoom type meeting looking at the facility. I know it's not there in person, but if that's accepted, that would be a way around that. Gosh, but then that comes into the other situation where we need to educate more veterinarians to be able to, look after the birds.
I would agree. We probably need to educate some more veterinarians so we can make sure there's enough veterinarians for the facility.
Dave, do we have another question?
We do. All too often, when a veterinarian will refuse to take a suggestion from well-educated, experienced owners, I have lost sugar gliders, even taken them into an experienced veterinarian. How do I convince a veterinarian to take good advice?
Go ahead, Dr. Torres.
Sure. Providing literature. If you have some sort of documentation or something that's scientifically proven that is going to be helpful for your sugar glider, that you can give as hard evidence to this veterinarian, that way they have to listen to that, because that's what our entire field is based off of, is scientific proof. And you can talk to a nutritionist. There's lots of awesome nutritionists that do in fact know a lot more than I do about sugar glider nutrition, and I will talk to them and they will help me out, and I will give their information to owners to help out. And there's, as a veterinarian, sometimes you can be humbled.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree with that. I think there are some wonderful veterinarians out there. I think there are some that maybe don't have as much experience and do feel a little threatened by an owner who is confident. And there are owners who are sometimes confident and they're not accurate. But as he said, if you've got some good evidence-based materials that back that, and it's not a printout from a forum that was discussing things, and it's good medicine and good advice and good reputable services, or resources, absolutely share that with your veterinarian, because your veterinarians, if any veterinarian says they know everything about everything, then that's concerning, because Lord knows I've learned so much from my owners. With exotics, I've had owners who have taught me about certain behaviors with the species. I see reptiles too, and I tell the snake owners in particular, I'm not a reptile breeder. I can deal with the health. Don't ask me about morphs. I don't know how to breed some of these guys. Like, I refer to them as being the experts with that. Give me the medicine. But I can't discuss many aspects of exotic animal medicine. I have a lot of pets, the ones I own. I have that experience. I've dealt with it firsthand. So again, circling back, if you can provide them good information that's backed by science, they should be open to that.
You, Dr. Weed, did you have anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I would agree. Trying to find a common ground, try to work together to solve the solution or solve the problem. As my faculty advisor used to say all the time, the plural of anecdote is not data. If you're trying to convince someone, it helps to have some kind of data, even if there is limited data. Something that someone might have tested or worked out empirically is always helpful. Telling your VMO or your attending that they don't know anything won't get you anywhere. That's not a helpful way to start. So, and you're not the first person who's had that issue.
Great. Dave, do we have anything else?
We have no questions in the question box. Again, if you want to ask your question directly, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Okay, not seeing any additional ones. Tara, we'll start with you. Can you describe the types of health issues you would expect an experienced breeder or caretaker of these animals to address themselves versus the things that you would expect them to have to call their vet for?
I'm gonna pass to the veterinarians on this one, maybe circle back with me.
No problem. Dr. Mackey?
So the question is things I think the breeder can handle. Of course, it kind of depends on the species, but a lot of that basic husbandry, they should already be to the point that they're providing appropriate things, appropriate food, appropriate temperatures and caging. I would hope that they would see and recognize when there's a problem. And beyond that, I don't want to be vague with an answer, but it depends on what their experience level is. And is this just a backyard breeder with a couple of animals, or is this a breeder who's large volume that I've been working with for years, and we've worked side by side on numerous cases, and I've got that relationship with that we can communicate by phone or with some pictures, then there may be some things that I can just give instructions over the phone or they feel comfortable with. So I think there are plenty of things that breeders can do, but it's very situation and species dependent. basic wound management, some of the treatment of parasites. No, I don't want them just to jump in and start giving antibiotics. We just had the whole antibiotic resistance discussion. I want to be involved with that aspect of it. Hopefully that answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Torsen?
Yeah, I feel like that sufficiently answered the question. I say the only maybe other thing, if I didn't catch it, would be trusting them with, seeing what animals and observing, because they know their animals best, are sick and need help. So yeah, I think a lot of it is situational, who the breeder is, who the rescue is, what I feel comfortable with them doing, what they feel comfortable doing. So yeah, I would agree with everything she says.
I would say, before you get into breeding, you would have, that baseline knowledge to at least be able to have an indicator of when it's appropriate to bring your animal to the veterinarian.
I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Weed, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I learned a great deal from working with all my veterinary colleagues over the years. So much so that if I ran into a problem, I would call one of my great friends and ask her if she could give me some input. She always told me that I already knew the answer, but I said I always wanted to get a verification that I wasn't overstepping my bounds practicing veterinary medicine without a license, or alternative possibilities, things I didn't know about because I had different training than she did. It was always a great conversation with her, and we did a lot of work together, and it was great fun to do that. So I always enjoyed consulting with her, and I've consulted with several other of my veterinary colleagues over the years on several issues.
Okay, thank you. Dave, is there a comment?
There is a comment. I think it's good to recognize successful, well-informed experience can be its own form of expertise. Having a network of like-minded breeders can be key to foster further education.
Okay, any of our panelists want to comment?
I agree with that statement.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
And we have another question here. What has been the most joyous part of your career in animal welfare, and what advice would you give early career or pre-career individuals?
Dr. Weed, do you have a comment?
Oh, yes, indeed. I think the most enjoyable thing that ever happened to me was someone consulted with me on a behavior problem, and this was in the laboratory, and I provided the best guidance I had. And about 2 weeks later, that individual said, Dr. Weed, what you told me worked. And I said, I'm certainly glad it did. So that made me very happy that, someone was listening to what I suggested, made some recommendations, tried to refine the procedures, what it needed to be, and they were ecstatic that it worked. And I was happy to see that they were happy.
Dr. Mackey?
Yeah, I would just say it's knowing that we can make a difference. And when we make a difference for one animal with one owner, we know that that message carries forth, and that's going to be applied to others and to others and to others. Vet medicine is tough, and it can be absolutely heartbreaking. But every day there's going to be one of those cases where you're like, I did really well here. Like, I made a difference in this animal's life. And like, for those who were in my lecture with parasites, dealing with that poor rabbit that had spent years in a teeny tiny cage, never got out, only ate pellets, was fat, was bored, was sick, was miserable. I made a difference in that animal's life because the owner was willing to make changes. She saw the difference, and it goes and it goes and it goes. And that keeps my heart happy. It keeps my momentum going. I will stay working with animal welfare because I can make a difference. That's good for people. That's good for animals. That's my joyous heart happy moment.
Oh, I'm already muted. Yeah, I think those relationships, I mean, just having some people that even if things don't necessarily go the way you're hoping, they're still so thankful, and it always touches me. It's just the reason that I keep doing what I'm doing. And advice for early career, I mean, I'm early career, so I guess I can't say too much on that, but pre-career, I mean, network, talk to people, be humble enough to ask for advice at any step of the way, and get your foot in there and try things. You know, yeah, it's hard to be outgoing. I'm a little introverted myself and soft spoken, so you just have to try and take as many opportunities as you can.
Perfect. Tara, would you like to share?
Sure, I would say the highlight also for me would be that problem solving and then being able to pass that education on. It's very satisfying. And then as far as pre-career, I would say doing a lot of self-education, definitely networking. And then, if it's appropriate, if it fits your situation, you learn so much when you do have that hands-on pet experience, like with the exotics.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other hands raised or questions, we'll move on to the next question. Dr. Torsen, we'll start with you. What factors should prospective buyers consider before obtaining a small pet? What role can you or others play in encouraging that process? You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, so basically selection of animals. There's a lot of different resources. Doing your due diligence, doing your research beforehand, and having employees at whether it be a breeder or pet store that are willing to educate is important. Things to look out for specifically in an exact animal, one that's bright, alert, happy, interactive. Maybe, you don't see a lot of other animals that are sick in the group because they're, interacting with each other, passing diseases along to each other. There's a really nice suitability guide because you need to consider your own at-home environment. What kind of young children do you have? What kind of older people or sick people do you have? What types of diseases are they going to get? So the WWF has a pet suitability guide that's really nice for that. Looks at lots of different exotic pets. And yeah, I think that's a lot of different things to consider. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Mackey?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what he said. The one thing that I recommend also is if somebody can do volunteer work at a rescue that deals with that kind of animal, I think that gives them some good experience. I've known some rescues who will let them foster an animal, whether they're going to adopt from there or not, just taking that guinea pig home for 2 weeks and having to clean up after it and see what it's like. They're either going to love it or they're going to go, that wasn't so bad. So I do think if there's an opportunity for them to get some hands-on experience, come volunteer at my clinic and clean some cages, see what it's like. It gives them a little bit of that reality of how it is with those animals. But again, everything Dr. Torsen was saying with, doing that due diligence is incredibly important.
Okay, Tara?
Yeah, I would agree. I know it's easy to get wrapped into like some of the TikTok trends and you only see the good side. And so really just, yeah, doing your due diligence, educating yourself, like trying to face the reality of what the care is that animal is going to need.
Thank you. Dr. Weed?
I would tend to agree. Other things I would suggest, as has been suggested already, was you should do your homework if you're looking at any animal. I would always suggest, even if you don't have animals now, you make an appointment to consult with a vet and ask some very specific questions. Try to determine before you get the animal whether or not it would be a good fit in your house. One of the things I can think of is folks sometimes don't realize that the animal might be nocturnal, and they figure it would be fine. It sleeps all day and stays up all night, and everyone hears all the noise from the cages, and so that wasn't a good fit. But that's the natural history question, looking at what the animals do in the wild, how they live in the wild, and try to stay away from using your heart as a test whether the animal is cute and fuzzy. Sometimes cute and fuzzy is great, but when you have to ask the children to clean up the cage or do all sorts of other things, they may lose interest.
Okay, thank you.
And
Now
just
we'll
add on to that
yes,
homework,
go ahead.
I would say doing like a cost analysis before you get the animal, because there's just so much that goes into it in terms of like their setup, think about the vet care they're going to require, all of that. So just add on.
Thank you. That's a great add-on. All right, we'll open it up to any attendees that want to answer the question, or if you just want to share what struggles you had once you bought an animal and found out that there were issues that you wish you would have known. Again, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can put it in the Q&A.
Well, I have one question in Q&A. As a non-veterinarian, how do I access data from educated sources?
Dr. Torsen?
Sure. Is it okay if I put a link in here for something that they can refer to? All right, I tried to add the pet suitability guide that I was talking about. That is public access for everybody that is wanting to get a pet, and it gives you information on a wide variety of pets. Also, a lot of the places that we have been referring to, House Rabbit, ARAV, AAV, AMV, those are public access. Those are on the internet, pretty easy to find. And talking to a veterinarian is obviously also a good option as well if you have that availability.
And we can, maybe we need to type it up or present it for, because I think Dr. Torres and I both keep rattling off all these initials. Association of Avian Veterinarians. It's a group of veterinarians, but they do have great avian resources. Association of Exotic Mammal Veterinarians, Association of Reptile and Amphibian Veterinarians. And even though the organizations, the members are veterinarians, their goal as veterinarians is to educate the pet owners and the industry. And so they all have resources. AAZV is another one. House Rabbit Society has good information. So there are a lot out there, and maybe that's something we can do post-conference, is kind of compile some recommended resources of organizations that do have good evidence-based information out there dealing with welfare.
Okay, Dr. Campitelli, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that I do think reaching out to veterinary groups such as those you mentioned is a good thing. I know from experience that working with breeding communities, sometimes these industries, the pet breeding industries are looked down upon by veterinarians. They say, well, you're just perpetuating the problem. So is there a way to help combat the stigma in some ways of pet breeding and make these conversations a little bit more approachable?
Anyone want to comment? Dr. Torsen?
I mean, I guess breeders, just along with everybody else, just education, make sure they're all looking at the same resources, and if they come with good educational information about their animals and are doing good husbandry, all of the, checking all the boxes, then I think a veterinarian would be happy to work with anybody. And, as if that becomes more widespread and, we don't see as many breeders that maybe aren't using that information to the best of its abilities, then that stigma will probably dissipate.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add to that. I do see what you're talking about. There are some people who they're exotic veterinarians and they're adamantly opposed to breeding. You see that with some of the dog and cat veterinarians too, because there are a lot of animals out there that are in difficulties, but not all veterinarians feel that way. And I think with a lot of these organizations, resources are there. They don't know if you're a breeder or not. If you're inquiring and you're asking for information, it's available there for you. And so, I think that stigma, it is there. I acknowledge it, but I think if as a breeder, you're doing a good job and you reach out, there are veterinarians who will work with you and will support you with the breeding and work with you to do the best things possible.
Okay, thank you. And if there are no further comment, then I will pass it over to Dr. Campitelli. She is our companion mammal field specialist that put most of this together for us for USDA APHIS Animal Care. Kathy, you want to close us out?
Can I comment on one thing before we go?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dr. Weed.
All right. I don't know if the individual is still listening, but I was consulting my ACLAN Blue Book on the gerbil question and about sand bathing. And yes, you can provide sand bathing for the gerbils. And what it says in the Blue Book is if it's allowed or possible in the laboratory, essentially. So I got the answer, but I'm hoping that the folks who asked that question are still available.
Awesome. Thank you. And just a reminder for everyone in HUVA, you do have direct access to all of our speakers today and yesterday. So if you have any questions that you guys think of that you would like to ask still, feel free to reach out to them directly in HUVA and ask the question. With no further delay, I will pass it over to Dr. Kathy Campitelli.
Thank you. And I do want to just do a quick wrap up. I think we had some really great speakers and presenters today. So thank each and every one of you. Thank you all for spending your Saturday with us. This was not an easy thing to do. So thank you all for sticking it with us and through our little technical difficulties that we had throughout the day, but really appreciate everybody being here and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all again and have a great day.